since 2007, and it's great to be back here again to teach in person. So we're slowly reemerging and coming back together. So thank you so much. Thank you also for wearing your masks. I'm going to teach without the mask. And thank you to everybody showing up in Zoom and things like that. So tonight, the topic is mindful self-compassion. Mindful self-compassion, I find hugely helpful right now for what's going on in the planet. Hugely helpful for the many things we were just talking about. A really big part of our practice, a component of our practice. It's not necessarily pure Dharma, pure Buddhism in a sense, but this will have Buddhism in it. And I just find it's, for Westerners, this is the thing we need that has to be included as well. We have this idea about compassion, and Buddhism is all about compassion for the planet and for all living beings and things like that. And then we forget about compassion for ourselves. So it doesn't work that way. It's got to start here, but it's got to start here with a bigger perspective like that, a bigger perspective of all living beings. How can we help all living beings? Let's just take a moment to set our motivation, set our minds in the right direction. And you can just sit comfortably, just close your eyes lightly. And so for some of us, this is the end of a work week, perhaps. Could be the end of a busy day. As you settle into your physical position, finding comfort in the position, just allow your respiration to deepen. And a deep inhalation, feeling that oxygen, feeling that air moving through your whole body, even down to a molecular level, washing through all the mental activity as well. Upon an exhalation, a deep exhalation, just releasing any tension you find you're holding in your body, releasing all those negative notions we have. Just allowing that breath to deepen. Inhalation and exhalation. This is the first level in self-compassion. First level is, please, if you can you just offer yourself 10 minutes a day to just sit quietly, allowing yourself the stillness. Even if your mind is jumping around, it doesn't matter. Just allow yourself to be for a moment instead of doing. And you watch the thoughts sift through. You may have some really big negative sweeping judgments come through. Some lighter, delightful thoughts come through, happy thoughts. They're just thoughts. You just watch them, observe, without attaching more to one, making it bigger, freaking out about one. Just release those thoughts like bubbles into the space. You just bring your awareness to the breath, allowing the mind to calm, to settle there, unattached. Just being. And let's just think about the direction of our mind and our energy right now. And this is us taking control of our mind, directing it how we would like it to go, how we would like it to be, by setting a motivation, positive intention. We can do it before any activity at all to make it a more virtuous activity that layers more positive imprints in our mind, in our consciousness, that will ripen in happiness for us in the future. So we're very focused in this tradition on benefiting all living beings, helping as many people as possible, even if we are limited in doing so. We try our best. In this tradition, the best way to do that is to become a fully enlightened being, a Buddha. Then you're perfect. Every perfect thought you have every moment, every intention. Your wish is just to help all living beings. Every intention is directed in that way. You have fully manifested in your mind every positive quality, like wisdom, compassion, loving kindness. Every moment you breathe, think of that consciousness. So just setting some imprints right now, directing us to that consciousness. Take a moment if you'd like to add that motivation to yours, that may I get enlightened quickly to benefit the real purpose, to benefit all living beings. Feel free to include that in your motivation, or at the very least, please place your mind, direct your mind in the most positive way, positive motivation for our time together and all the activities of the rest of your day. Please relax, and slowly, when you're ready, please open your eyes. Just notice for a moment too, as you open your eyes, how you're feeling. So this was very short, the meditation, but again, if you can do 10 minutes, and the thing is, when you finish a meditation, it's really helpful to just pause for a moment rather than we get up, we want to have a drink, we reach for our phone. Just notice what effect on the mind. But just that calming, we didn't do 10 minutes, but just that calming moment, offer that to yourself. It's just a really nice, compassionate thing to do for yourself. From there, you can build other meditations in as you learn other meditations to add. It can be really, really helpful. So I just wanted to mention that as a beginning. Let's talk about self-compassion and what gets in the way, what happens. We have this idea that we can't really focus on ourselves. You hear self-compassion, that it's a concern because then I'm being selfish. Okay. So this kind of compulsive concern with I, me, mine. This is from Sharon Salzberg. Sharon Salzberg is a great Vipassana teacher, teaches a lot about mindfulness. She founded Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts, one of our big Vipassana centers in the country. The other one is Spirit Rock Meditation Center in Northern California. They're not FPMT centers, but very nice for the mindfulness movement. She says this kind of compulsive concern with I, me, mine, okay, isn't the same as loving ourselves. Loving ourselves points us to capacities of, listen to these words, resilience, compassion, and understanding within that are simply part of being alive. Okay. So I think of resilience as an incredible force of self-compassion. Look at the pandemic. The people that fared the best were resilient, a flexibility of mind as well. They're suddenly their job, their business closed. I knew people that just went off in a different direction. I've got to figure something out. Part of it was necessity to support their family. But there's some people that got stuck and paralyzed. I don't know how to figure it out. I'm going to hang with depression. I'm going to hang with anxiety. When you do it, you make more trenches of those in your mind. So the resilience is you pick yourself. We all make mistakes as humans. We all make mistakes. That's the nature of being a human, is you're going to make mistakes. So accept that, okay? And then it's like, okay, let me learn from it. Let me figure out a different way. Learn from that. Okay? So instead of kind of having a notion, starting with a notion that, okay, something about you is broken and needs to be fixed, right? It'd be nice to just find a response to emotional pain that you may experience in a new, more compassionate and loving way. So on some level, we can hang with this samsaric thing that we are broken. We know that. We know we make mistakes, but let's really look at, how to respond. What's my response, which is a lot about Buddhism. And I know that right now I'm helping a center in California, but I'm helping many, many centers all the time. I really like to do that because the centers are beacons, are there for all kinds of beings to come that get help, and they get techniques, and they learn how to meditate, and these different things they learn how to do. And and what I find all these years being involved with centers for Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who's placed me at certain centers, right? It's not about the success of the center necessarily. Like, you want to be successful. You want the center to be able to pay its bills. You want the center to have great programs. You want the center to have the best staff and everybody gets along, and, but that's not the key to the success, other than everybody tries to get along. Okay, you try to cultivate the harmony. Okay. So I noticed that some of the meetings we're having now in the center, this one particular center in California is struggling right now. We have a very good team of people, very dedicated, right? But we bump up against each other at times and might say the wrong thing or think the wrong thing or project something onto somebody that really is not their trip at all, right? And then I kind of can back up and look at everybody, in the meeting of, it's not what we're doing, it's how we're doing it, how we're doing it. So how we respond is a huge part of Buddhist practice, huge component also in self-compassion. So, and this is from Allen Ginsberg. The suffering itself is not so bad, right? It's the resentment against suffering that's the real pain, right? We suffer in different ways. And this is where, we lose self-compassion. We start beating ourselves up. We suffer in different ways. That's not necessarily the real pain of it. It's when I hate myself because I made this mistake. I resent myself because I'm doing this negative pattern again and again. So those that resistance to it. Let's look at, how do we deal with, pain creates a conflict between the way things are and how we'd like them to be. Okay. And then you feel like your life is unsatisfactory. I've got this idea of how I want things to be, and this is the way they are. And I'm not actually, in Buddhism, a lot of times we're not seeing the way things really exist at all. Okay. So then I'm going to impute a mistaken notion onto things. There's the source of the suffering, not having a direct perception of emptiness, obviously. Okay. So what we get into is the more we then wish our lives to be different than they are, the worse we feel. There's no acceptance of what's really going on right now. No acceptance for a lot of people. Okay. So we fight. So instead of greeting difficult emotions by fighting hard against them, we can bear witness to our own pain. Okay. And we can respond with kindness, understanding. That's self-compassion. Taking care of ourselves just as we treat someone we love dearly. Okay. So again, instead of greeting difficult emotions, you find depression arises in your mind. And this is another way I deal with it. Can you de-identify with the story, the drama, and the emotion? De-identify. So, you notice depression in your mind, and maybe you're chronically depressed, where there's a lot of depression in your mind. You're not a depressed person necessarily, but we label ourselves that way. I see people say, I'm a really anxious person. We just have a lot of anxiety in your mind. It's different. There's a little bit of space. So de-identify with that emotion, okay? But can I just watch what's going on? This is where the mindfulness comes in. Can I just bear witness that, well, today, I have days where I'll go, well, today really wasn't a very good day. I either beat myself up or I just feel kind of beaten down, like things didn't go the way I wanted. But I can just bear witness and notice, observe. Because the thing is, your mind's always changing. So tomorrow there's a good chance that things will be different. And usually they are. So if you're not holding too tightly to this is what happened today and this is awful, awful, awful. And then tomorrow you talk about how awful it was again. Yesterday was awful. Then it becomes more awful. The drama becomes bigger. Okay. I become bigger in the drama myself, meaning the I, me, mine. Not me taking care of myself, but this inflated notion of myself. So, and here's the other thing is when you notice, and there's been a lot of anxiety in the pandemic, a lot of depression. Now we've got this war with Ukraine and inflation and, on and on, that climate change, all these things that go on. So what happens is if you've got anxiety about that, there's a lot of things to be anxious about. Okay, let's just acknowledge. But if you've got anxiety, and if you have a little bit more anxiety and you suffer from panic attacks, here's one thing you want to understand is it's actually kind of a natural part of life. So in primordial days, prehistoric days, okay, well, let's say there were dinosaurs, there were large beings running around, there were kind of prehistoric people living. So your survival mechanism was to watch out for danger. So that's where that stuff comes from. You want a little bit of the tension in life because that's how you survive and get on. Okay. But the thing is, once you acknowledge that pain, that resistance, human nature, all of those things, I can kind of relax with it and not have to feed more into it and just notice, okay, it comes from a primordial instinct, survival instinct and mechanism. That's okay. Just acknowledge that, but I don't need to embellish more of that to make more depression and anxiety in my mind. But sometimes we let it go on. And then part of it is we also have, I just want to ask how are you doing with, oh, thank you. She's bringing you a mask. I forget too. How sweet, thank you. I forget too. It was the first time I walked into a restaurant today without a mask on, I mean, in Florida, you can do that. In Santa Cruz, California, not really. So I'm amazed, like everybody in California is still completely masked up and you don't get served by anybody who doesn't have a mask on. Thank you. So another thing I want to notice with your self-compassion, we have this term samsara. You're familiar in Buddhism, means to turn, to cycle. Sanskrit term, samsara. And you're simply turning. So I told this story before about the word samsara. I told this a long time ago in here. Some of you remember. So years ago, I'll see if the Zoom people remember as well. This is an old story. Years ago, I was living at Vajrapani Institute in California. And in the 90s, I think. Anyway, some cosmetic company introduced a new scent, right? Called samsara. So, and they had advertisements. So finally I think I was visiting my parents. I saw the ad on TV because we didn't have TV at the center. Saw the ad on TV, and they make it, a very sexy term. And they have a woman with a like magenta scarf, and she's like floating across the screen. And then there's a voiceover, and they show the perfume bottle, the name, and then there's a voiceover. Samsara. Right? Like, how could you not want it? Like you'd see it and you go, and there's like attraction, like, what is that? It's perfume, new perfume. So it's suffering. It means to cycle. Literally, it means to cycle, but it's kind of sexy word if you don't know what it means. But it means to turn. What are you turning through? Birth, old age, sickness, and death. All of that is suffering. Okay, this is the realm we live in. As a human being, you will experience samsara. Know, though, you can get out of samsara. Absolutely on this path. You can bring about a permanent cessation of all your mental afflictions, and that's nirvana, liberation from samsara. You can get out. So have that motivation in your practice. Don't feel that you're stuck in this. But right now, while we're human beings, this is a broken situation. So get over trying to fix samsara. Be so much easier for you. Get over trying to fix samsara, right? So meaning like, and I mentioned this the other night, as soon as I get the new job, everything's going to be okay. As soon as I take care of the healthcare thing for my husband, everything's going to be okay. Soon as I sort out my treatment and things, everything's going to be okay. Soon as I get the new apartment, soon as I get the new job, soon as I get my relationship sorted, it's not just going to be another thing in samsara. That's its nature. That's its nature. I've done it I usually have old cars. And I remembered once I was studying Buddhism in the beginning, samsara, they explained. And so I started to get to this thing where when I put the key in and turned it and it would start, I'd be like, yay. Like I kind of expected it not to start. Like I had a mindset like that. So another thing to ask yourself in relation to taking care of yourself, one of the big things about in Buddhism is impermanence and change. Impermanence and change, that we are going to die one day and it's going to come soon, coming soon, right? So, because even if you get 80 years, it's not that long of a time, really, at this point. So you want to look at how do you change now? How do you deal with little changes in your life? Your friend cancels lunch at the last minute. You okay with that? Somebody's late to meet you. The plans change, or somebody, you were looking forward to this event and then it rains and they can't do it. And how do you deal with it? Because if you practice with the little changes, releasing a little bit, it's okay. Things change. That's their nature. Things are changing all the time. Your mind is changing all the time. And when the big changes come, like the death of a loved one, then you'll feel, then I've kind of practiced. I know people die. This is going to happen slowly. So these are components of us getting familiar with our reality, getting familiar with our reality. So the more I'm facing reality, facing up to the way it really exists, the happier you can be. Happier you can be, the more released from the trips and the dramas and again, this whole, mindful self-compassion is, I'm kind of waking up to wanting what isn't existing, insisting that I want things to be this way, and I'm not acknowledging the way they really are. The other half of that samsara story, I told this story before as well, is so then they have this scent, samsara. So a couple of years after that, I was in India living for a couple of years. I come back and I'm trying to get a new Indian visa in San Francisco. And I'm waiting outside the store, and the Lama who ordained me, his attendant is going to pick me up, take me to dinner, and I'm waiting for him, and I think he phoned, he's going to be late, whatever. I'm inside the store, but I've been living in India for a couple of years. And when you're living in India for a couple of years, you come back to the States, you're not as oriented with the States and I remember being a little bit spaced out, and I'm waiting for him, and there's some kind of store across the street, but I didn't really focus on what it was. But somehow I decided I'm going to go in this store and maybe I needed a gift for somebody. And I go in this store and I'm on this floor, very nice store, but I couldn't tell what it was. And I still don't know what kind of store it is. And there's counters, but I don't see any items, but there's very nicely dressed salespeople behind these kind of marble counters. And I'm kind of looking around. I must have looked very, very confused. And a salesperson comes over to me and says, "Can I help you?" Right? But, when you're in this kind of India mode and you're disoriented and, I didn't really know what to say. And I didn't know what they could help me with because I didn't know what the store was. And all I could blurt out was, in utter confusion with this look on my face was, what is this place? You know? To which he replied, Bloomingdale's, right? Which I knew, you know, and then I was like, oh, okay, oh, department store, like, okay, like, how did I get in Bloomingdale's? Like, there's no sign outside that I saw, but then I'm still looking at this floor, I don't know what they're selling, right? So it ends up, it's a cosmetic floor, and all the cosmetics are in the counters. So they didn't have them on the thing, so I start walking around and I'm like, oh, it's a cosmetic store, and there's lotions, and you know, Bloomingdale's is expensive. So there's lotions. I was joking with somebody. One guy shows me this little pot, face cream, and it's $700. And I, you know, after India, I was like, that's a fortune. You know, 8 people could live on that for a year, $700. I was like, but so then I made a joke and I said, well, $700. And I said, what's in it, gold? And he said, yes. Okay, well, you know. So it was so funny. So I'm walking around the counter. This is where Rinpoche, where you get really a qualified guru, teacher, who knows your mind. He's always around. He's here right now, no question. I mean, in the heart, right? I'm walking around, and then another guy says, Madam, at would you like a couple samples? And he pushes his 2 little plastic pots over to me. Would you like a couple samples? Well, I'm traveling on the road. Little pots like that are great, of lotion. They're small. Didn't take it with me. So I looked and I said, oh, and he said, well, he said the name of the scent is underneath. You know, so I was like, oh, okay. And I take it and I turn it over, look underneath. What does it say? Samsara, right? And I just laughed and I was a little bit like, Rinpoche, are you here watching me? Like who needs more of that? You know, I'm like, I don't want that. So funny. So think about change and think about, you know, am I facing reality accurately? Am I accepting what is that's broken? And so there's a general process with you walking through it, rather than the constant resistance. This is not working the way I wanted. I had an intention it was going to be different. Can you just look at what is unfolding? The program, let's say, center didn't go as you planned. What are you going to do? You're going to get upset with people? You're going to get upset with the teacher? You're going to go to the program coordinator? Well, this didn't work out. The sound system's not working. I've had that at many centers. You try to fix it. You try to fix it. You know, Ralph came in the other night. We wanted to have the Zoom on the screen. He went in and he goes, no, I can't do it on the thing. Okay, accept. It's not the end of the world. Right? Some things are a bigger deal. So you want to apply what you need to do. If it's a bigger deal, you want to make sure maybe it doesn't happen again. So you take care to make sure the precaution. Okay, but I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm not going to beat myself up that I'm not doing a good job. I'm not going to focus on all the negative stuff that I'm doing, right? There's other components. We have to look at the whole picture. So I would ask you, those of you that have a critical, negatively critical mind, which can be a lot of us, right? How much of your day is spent focusing on the negative stuff you're doing? And look at that, the negative stuff you're saying, the negative thoughts in your mind. What percentage as opposed to the positive things that are happening that you're creating? Any idea? Anybody in the Zoom? What percentage? Are you pretty good about looking at the good stuff? Oh, we have Linda Melisana. She was the SPC here years ago. She's in New York now, I believe. Welcome, Linda. Wonderful. What percentage? Are most of you pretty good with, you know, acknowledging the good stuff you do? Just curious. Pretty good. Thank you.
I've gotten pretty deep into a gratitude practice, and it's helped me immensely to acknowledge small but really amazing things.
Wonderful. What's your name?
Robbie.
Robbie. Yeah. Robbie's saying she's gotten into a deep gratitude practice that's really supporting her every day. So fantastic practice is gratitude. Thank you. Huge practice. So I wake up with that every morning. That's my, like the waking moments. You know, when you just start to come into consciousness, I've talked about this before, you're just coming into consciousness. Use that time. Don't hit the snooze. Use that time. Coming into consciousness. You just woke up, okay, in a comfortable bed with food, clothing, shelter, maybe decent family and friends. Maybe you've had access to good public education, and maybe you have a vehicle to drive and you live in a relatively safe place with relatively clean air. And does anybody feel grateful for that? You know, fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. I mean, it's amazing. So I just allow myself first a moment, a minute or two. Great. You know, because sometimes you wake up and you're kind of like, oh, another day. You don't want to wake up like that. Some days are harder. You know, you have a whole, like I got these meetings today, oh, not long, you know, but it's still like, well, I'm so glad I can participate in these meetings. But the next 2 minutes, do you ever focus on your good qualities? Right? That gets a little more delicate, right? It's one thing to think about my circumstances, my good qualities. We think it trips into egomaniacal behavior. No, it lends to a balance because we're not focused that much on our positive qualities, on our good qualities. And we have many good qualities. You might tell yourself you don't. You have many. I don't know all of you, but the fact that you got yourself into the room, that you're associated with Thupten Kunga Center, that you have Zoom, that you have the ability to connect and understand how to create a technical connection for you with many good qualities like that. So we need to have equal airtime to focus on some of the goodness. Like that's really, really helpful. So I have that right in the morning to think about that. The next thing I think about is I'm going to die soon. Okay. Not in a morbid way, but to motivate my day. I want to use this day really meaningfully. So I have these little components there. So the gratitude is really helpful to battle back the negative stuff. What you notice is if you're spending a lot of your day just focused on everything you do wrong, you're a human being, you're going to get stuff wrong. It's natural. But if that's all you're focused on, it's going to lend a really heavy mindset. I never do anything right. Nobody likes me. I don't deserve to be loved. I can't do anything. It's just not accurate. It's not accurate. So you have to do that work to really spend the time with the gratitude on the good circumstances and your good qualities. So another thing is communication. How do we communicate? First of all, the stories in our heads with ourselves, okay? How do you communicate with others? Can we get into an authentic space with it? You know, so, you know, an example I give is those of you that live with other people, partner, you know, as if your partner just criticized you for yelling at your daughter, right? Your feelings get hurt, right? Then you have an argument. So what if you imagine, and then you have a fight from there. And this happens a lot. You misinterpret people. You feel like they publicly humiliated you, okay? And there's a fight, and or you always do that. And you fall into your trenches, okay? It doesn't have to be a partner. It could be just a family member. It could be a friend, could be a colleague, and you get into these ruts with each other. So what if right there, self-compassion break, I acknowledge the pain, the hurt, the suffering. There's my mindfulness. This sucks, you know, they just hurt me. They just said something really unkind. They said it in front of these people, or just we're alone. They said it. What if I just took a couple deep breaths? Here's the mindfulness. I'm hurting right now. I don't know if I really did anything wrong, but breathe in, I breathe out. Breathe in. And then you can come back to the person, okay? Maybe you say, more than anything, I want to be a good parent. It's so painful to me when I yell at my kid. I love my kid more than anything in the world, but sometimes I just lose it. I'm only human. So, and you're even saying this to yourself, may I learn to forgive myself for my mistakes, and may I find a way that we can live together in peace, or that we can live together. You know, so this is a gentle approach. It's different than some of the stories we have in our mind when something like that happens, right? And that's where the disagreements come from. And then we start fighting. It's where the war in Ukraine comes from, for God's sake. Misunderstandings, miscommunications, okay? A misappropriation of my ego, thinking I'm better than I am. So this gentle approach, and even there's a couple, I have a very close friend, my oldest friend, longest term friend from childhood, lives in Austin, Texas now, with her partner of 35 years, I'm guessing, or longer. And I've stayed with them at times. And one time I was with them, and she kind of supports his work, And he does kind of CEO consulting and stuff. And I get up in the morning, I come out into the apartment, and he's racing around the apartment. He can't find a file. She's racing around with him looking for the file. This goes on. I feel the tension, and he's late for a meeting, and he suddenly snaps at her. Well, I told you that if you just put the briefcase where I told you to put it, then I would have the file, right? And I see, and she stops, and I'm like, that wasn't very nice. And he's really angry. And I'm watching her. She's the friend I've known. And she turns to him and she says very calmly, what I just heard you say was blah, 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 blah. But what I think you meant was, I'm really late for the meeting. I'm really stressed. I'm really upset. I can't find the file. I probably put it somewhere. And I'm really grateful to you for looking around with me to try to find it. And then she goes, and I'm like, how's this going to go down? Like, because he's very volatile. He kind of dropped his head like that, nodded his head a couple times, not looking at her. His face got beet red. He looked at her and he said, thank you so much. You're absolutely right. So this was a game this was a device they had, the two of them figured out together for their relationship, that they decided that they were going to do this. And this was just old hat for them. When they had a disagreement and one of them snapped at the other, and they both done it, this was what they do. Is what I heard was blah, 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 like was the trigger. And here's what I really think you meant. And they had a really good relationship. And I was very impressed with, so there's ways even with humor that you can gently add that, where I'm taking care of myself. That was her taking care of herself because she doesn't deserve to get yelled at. She doesn't want him to yell at her. He doesn't need to do that. So she has compassion for him, but she has enough self-respect to say, you don't want to treat me that way. In fact, you're not going to treat me that way because that's not what our relationship's about. Because they had a lot of respect for each other. A lot of respect for each other. Humor's a great one to add in genuine humor in a way with, I had a thing with my dad. I was talking to Gina earlier. My dad was a great guy, he passed away, but he would verbally he just had these barbs. He'd just say, it was just a habit he had with my mom. But when my mom passed and I was living with him for a while, I didn't really appreciate it sometimes. It was rude one time. So, greeting him coming into the kitchen one day and seeing him, hi, good morning. And then he'd be like, you look like crap. It's not a very nice thing to say, but that was kind of how he operated in the family. We were just used to it. But I was kind of like, this is not okay anymore. My mom's not here. She didn't deserve it anyway. So instead of getting angry at him or storming out or saying something negative back, humor. And I looked at him and said, well, good morning to you, bundle of sunshine. The big smile, genuinely. And then he looked and he said, I'm sorry. And it's okay. It passed, it's done. But just again, that gentleness for myself. I don't want to come from a hostile place at him. He's had this habit for many years. I'm not expecting him to change. He's doing the best he can. Can counter with some humor. So again, look at pain. Pain times resistance, you get suffering. Pain's inevitable. This is samsara. Pain's inevitable. Suffering's kind of optional though. Right? Depending on how you respond, how you want to look at it. What's your resistance about? Okay. And it seems that the more intense our emotional pain, the more we suffer by obsessing, by blaming. We blame ourselves by feeling defective. Okay. But so the good news is that since most of the pain in our lives is really suffering, okay, the result of fighting the experience of pain, that's what suffering, the result of fighting the experience of pain, we can actually do something about it, okay? So Buddhism also isn't about suppressing that I'm not suffering, I'm okay, I'm not angry. Buddhism isn't like that. When you suppress your anger, when you resist something, basically, we all know that resistance about it, doesn't it, there's one expression, doesn't it kind of go to the basement and start lifting weights? Becomes bigger for us, okay? So what I like to do is to seek a middle way. We usually can tolerate all manner of difficulties that, that can lead us to a meaningful life. You can tolerate a lot of different things, you know. We have wisdom, this quality of knowing short and long-term consequences for things, for your actions. Okay, choosing a path of greatest long-term benefit, is one of the things we're trying to do also in Buddhism. Sticking to your deepest commitments, deepest values that you'd like to do, regardless of the obstacles, you keep holding through, and that can lead to long-term happiness and things. So I like to find that middle way, okay, where I'm facing and avoiding difficulties. If I can avoid a difficulty, great. Otherwise I have to face it. Okay. But I'm not gonna make myself bad in the process. Okay. And I might feel fragile, I might feel vulnerable, and I'm gonna look at that to help me change some things, to be innovative, stuff like that. So I find a middle way rather than constant blame on myself, right? Which causes me to constantly blame others, somebody else's fault, not taking responsibility, not facing up to stuff. There's going to be difficulties in life like that. And self-compassion in many ways is one of the most natural things in the world. And for instance, I give you an idea. If you cut your finger, the first thing you usually do is you go and you clean it out and you get some kind of ointment it's a natural, the tendency is, oh, I cut myself. But somehow emotionally, we don't want to take care. But it is actually just an innate quality in us, okay? So what happens when our emotional well-being is at stake? What happens? And, so again, we want to first remind ourselves the tension, the stress comes once again in our genes from this primordial moment of protecting ourselves, survival mechanism, okay? But from there, I can start to find gentle ways of acknowledging what's going on, make sure I take care of myself. And what I really like to do is use from Kristen Neff, who's a psychologist that teaches a lot about self-compassion. There's another wonderful book I read by Christopher Germer I would recommend. She has a self-compassion break that I really like to use. Let's look at some of these exercises. So I'd like you to just sit for a moment. We're going to close our eyes, come back to your meditation posture. Just close your eyes lightly. Just settle the mind on the breath for a moment. Make sure your shoulders are not up by your ears. Relax your brow, your jaw, neck and shoulders. We hold a lot of tension there. So the beginning of self-compassion practice and the beginning of a meditation practice, take a couple of minutes to scan your body, relaxing the tension in your body as much as possible. Because meditation comes from a very relaxed space of mind. Even though we're focused in meditation, we may find it takes a lot of effort to keep concentrated on something. The more you can disengage your nervous system, meditation then arises organically. It is the natural state of your mind. A spacious, clear experience is actually your mind. Not busyness, not clutter, not depression and anxiety. So I'd like you to reflect right now on a situation in your life that is difficult, a situation right now that is causing you stress. I'd like you to bring the situation to mind. And I'd like you to see if you can actually feel the stress, feel the emotional discomfort in your body. So, the first thing I'd like you to apply in this exercise is basic mindfulness. With this difficult situation, feeling the stress in your body, first step, let's acknowledge with mindfulness, this is a moment of suffering. That's all. This is a moment of suffering. And here's some other options using mindfulness. Perhaps you'd think, this hurts. Ouch. Or this is stress. So just holding that in your mind, just apply one of those mindfulness phrases or a couple of them. And using your mindfulness, just applying that to the discomfort you may be experiencing right now. This is not the time about fixing anything. This is not the moment that you need to resist the discomfort. It's there. It's not going away right now. Nothing else you can do. You're just observing with mindfulness. This is suffering. This is uncomfortable. Period. Here's a second step you can apply. I'm going to call it common or shared humanity. Common or shared humanity. Here's what you can say in your mind right now in relation to this difficulty, this discomfort. Suffering is a part of life. Or other people feel this way. Or maybe I'm not alone. or we all struggle in our lives. So again, just applying some of those phrases. Suffering's a part of life. I'm not alone. Other people feel this way. Other people experience this. You just mention that, think about it in your mind. You breathe in, you breathe out. Third component, loving kindness toward yourself. Loving kindness toward yourself. Just think, may I be kind to myself right now? May I be kind to myself? You might even want to put a hand on your chest, on your heart. You might want to hug yourself. There's some kind expression, feel free. And you might even say to yourself, what do I need to hear right now to express kindness to myself? So is there a phrase that I need right now that is going to help me express kindness to myself? Give me the support, such as, may I give myself the compassion that I need? Or maybe it's, may I learn to accept myself as I am? Or may I forgive myself? May I be strong? May I be patient? So again, what do you need to hear right now to express kindness to yourself? Say those phrases if you like, whatever phrase speaks to you. So please relax. Slowly, when you're ready, please open your eyes. So I want to talk about these three components. We just talked about mindfulness, shared or common humanity, and loving kindness. mindfulness is just coming into contact with what's happening, arising. This is discomfort, period. What happens in our culture is we're programmed to fix it, to drive it away, and to avoid it at any cost. But this is samsara. So if we're not trying to fix samsara, which is impossible, okay, you fix yourself and you get out of samsara, but you can't fix samsara. Okay, and ordinary beings as humans will experience samsara, but you can fix your mind and get out of it. Absolutely, everybody in this room, everybody in the Zoom room, like that. So the beginning is acknowledging, and what happens is we're running constantly, especially in the States. I find people cannot bear one tiny little prick of their toe. It's too much. Everything has to be really comfortable. It's just not the way the world is at this point. And I think it's getting worse. So we have to kind of rise up to the occasion. Why? Because people need our help. So if you came into this room, this is a Mahayana Buddhist center. So if you're in the teachings for this center, all of our centers, FPMT, right, it's about showing up for living beings as much as you can to help. I think everybody in here has a good heart. That's what you want. You really want to help people. We have to help ourselves as well in order to do that. We're not Buddhas yet. We're Buddhists, maybe. And people get very surprised and they project onto Buddhist centers. I can't believe people fight at Buddhist centers. I can't believe they disagree. I can't believe they misunderstand each other. I thought they were perfect. They're not Buddhas yet. They're Buddhists, ordinary beings. It's the biggest projection, biggest mistaken projection on our centers. When we were hiring people at some of the residential centers to live there with us and cook or clean or manage, and I'd ask them, why do you want to be here? I mentioned this the other night, because I want to live at a peaceful place where everyone gets along. It's not Buddhist centers. It's not nonprofits. They're, it's a nonprofit business in some ways. Sure, it has a loftier ideal, and we try to work on that all the time. We try to make these places great places for people to congregate, to do the work on their minds, of course. But there's ordinary beings running the place, involved. That means they're going to make mistakes. Okay? So with basic mindfulness, what I find is a lot of my spiritual practice is just getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, because I'm allowed to just be with it. I'm at a meeting. I'll be at a meeting for this center, and I'll just notice suddenly, like, there's some tension over there. Those two people, she just said something a little short to that person. I wonder what that's about. But I'm just observing. Okay, well, there's tension. Period. That's all. This is uncomfortable. Or somebody says something that hurts you. There it is again. That hurts. I might not have to say it to them, but in me, instead of going into a hole, I'm rejected, they don't want me. And no, it's just, that hurts, period. Okay. So the more I'm able to just be with the discomfort, it gets easier. It actually gets easier. It's less uncomfortable. That's what I found, acknowledging. Okay. Then you come to shared humanity, common humanity. Often when we're suffering, right? You're at a business meeting, you disagree, you're the only one experiencing that, right? The only one got hurt, the only one that anybody's ever yelled at, the only one that ever had a fight in their relationship, the only one who's misunderstood. No, everybody feels that way on the planet. So many people feel that way. So did you ever think about all these other beings on the planet? Right? So I'm not alone. Other people struggle like this. It's normal. So there comes that shared common humanity. We're all in this together. We're all in this together. Okay. Then we come to the loving kindness component. Do we ever add that step in? No, it's more like, okay, I'm aware I'm uncomfortable right now. Okay, I'm uncomfortable, right? Everybody feels this way. And then I'm off, out the door. Well, what do I need right now? Take care of myself in this space. Give it to yourself. What do you want to hear? I tried my best today. Well, it didn't really work out. All right. Okay, but I'm okay. Tomorrow I'm going to show up again. Why? For living beings. I really care about people. I love when somebody helps me out. I want to be there for somebody else. And so whatever you need to take the time to, even hand on the heart a little like this. I found myself at a meeting the other day, sitting like, I was like, I needed that. It was good. It's fine. It's no problem. And nobody really needed to know what I'm doing. I was just like taking care of myself. little protection. It's okay. Nice things, little exercises you can try for yourself. You deserve it. You deserve it. Let me go into a little bit more loving kindness, sometimes called self-kindness, you could call it, okay? By definition, means we can stop the constant self-judgment, okay? This disparaging internal commentary, okay, some of us have, that most of us have come to see as normal. Okay, when I asked you, I didn't get a lot of responses. I'm going to go back to my Zoomers here as well, because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. When I said to you, how many of you have negative criticism in your head about yourself? Negative self-criticism. Nobody wanted to kind of make eye contact or talk about it. Okay, now I got some hands up. The negative everybody's got their hand up in Zoom right now. Yeah. I mean, it's there. It's absolutely there. So again, we're just acknowledging. I'm just watching that. But here's the thing, what I just mentioned, self-kindness is you stop that constant self-judgment. You stop the disparaging internal commentary. I'm so tired of it in my own mind. It's really boring at this point. For years ago, I was just talking to somebody about, for years in the old days when we had cassette tapes, if those of you remember cassette tapes, and we'd say, did you tape it? You know, now we say, did you record it? Because, you know, and I always find millennials, if I say, did you tape it? And they're like, what? Tape? What's that? You know, when one of my friend's kids years ago asked, she had her records sitting on the floor, record albums, remember? Some people were like, what's that? And her daughter come and I remember she told me at the Vajrapani kitchen, she goes, yeah, she picked one up and she goes, Mom, what's this? I'm like, okay, where did I get old? So again, that internal commentary, the negative, you know, but you notice it's just normal. So as soon as one little thing you do, immediately you go into, I'm not good enough. Oh, I messed up again. Oh, I can't do anything right. Over and over, gets tiring. So self-kindness requires us to understand our failures, our limitations, okay? But instead of condemning them, you're understanding it. Like, I know now that when I get really tired, it's better off I'm not around people, you know, especially in a working capacity. If there's a lot of pressure with this job and we're in a meeting, it went on too long. I've had 6 meetings that day, and I'm really at the point where I'll be like, you know, you guys, I really have to go because I'm about to open my mouth in a not generous way, right? So I understand that about myself. I know that about myself, that it's just not going to work. And I can always apologize to somebody too and just say, I was really, really tired. It was completely out of line, you know, but I like to get myself out of there first. I understand that now about myself. I'm not condemning myself for it. I understand that everybody gets tired because everybody gets tired. I know that. Okay. And I'll be mindful. I'm really tired now. Okay. And what that says to me, my little self-compassion exercises, the mindfulness of I'm tired is, you know, and I'm really dating myself now. How many of you remember Lost in Space, the TV show? Lost in Space. Yeah, I've got some hands there. Okay. So Lost in Space, he had a robot, and I loved when the robot would say to him, danger, Will Robinson, danger. I have that in my mind. I'm really tired now. It'll be like, danger, Will Robinson. Pay attention to my mind so that I don't blow it with somebody because I'm tired. This is how we use the mindfulness, shared humanity. Well, everybody might, you know, end up saying something negative when they're tired, right? But my kindness is I'm not going to condemn myself in it. I just realize, well, when I get really tired, I get really testy, cranky like that. So I'm going to understand it entails clearly seeing the extent to which we harm ourselves through relentless self-criticism. It helps you end that internal war. Please do it. Okay. But just understand you're making a trench, okay, with the relentless self-criticism. I know we have habits of it. I'm not blaming you. I've had it myself. So when I said about cassette tapes, is I used to do these meditations years ago where I was kind of like, oh, you're running that tape again. I'm running that self-critical tape over and over. I've played it. And you know, sometimes with your old cassette tapes, those of you who used to play cassette tapes, after a while I got tired of them, didn't you? You know, it was like, oh, this one again. No, I don't want to listen to that one. Right? So eventually in this meditation, I I would start to say, oh, you're running that tape again, Amy. Like, let's choose another tape. And I'd visualize myself going into a box, getting a positive tape out. Eventually, I just threw the tape. Notice I chucked the tape out in my mind. I don't need that tape anymore. No benefit. Ending that internal war, okay? But self-kindness involves more than merely stopping the self-judgment. It involves actively comforting ourselves, responding just as we would to a dear friend in need, okay? Exercise number 2. I love this one. This is called, how would you treat a friend? How would you treat a friend? This is Kristen Neff again. I really like this one. Okay. So let's go back to our meditation posture. Just sitting comfortably. So I'd like you to imagine you're sitting on a park bench next to a very, very close friend. They said they really, really need to talk to you. They're struggling. And imagine you're sitting there and they're pouring out their heart about this struggle and what they're going through. They're feeling really bad about themselves. So just play this scene a little bit in your mind right now. And I want you to notice your friend comes to you for advice. They want your feedback. They want help. Notice what you say to them. And notice the words you use, the volume of your voice and the tone of your voice. Notice any physical gestures you make toward them. So I'd like you right now, with your friend, I'd like you to superimpose as if it's you sitting there, struggling, talking to yourself. You're telling the replica of yourself your problem, your struggle, you want advice, you want some help. How do you respond to yourself in this situation? So please relax and slowly, when you're ready, please open your eyes. Any difference in how you spoke to yourself versus your friend? Some people are, any differences? Yeah, different. How's it different?
I'm more rigid with myself.
More rigid with himself, Madeline was saying, with herself? Other people? Do you notice it? Yeah,
Yeah,
Gina.
I felt like I had lots to say to the friend, but when I switched, it was almost like things just shut.
Okay, so speaking to yourself, you're kind of shut down, where you have a lot of advice to give your friend, but with ourselves, not so generous, not much to say. And the rigidity, interesting. Anybody in Zoom? Anything different? Anybody want to comment? You look very pensive there, thinking. I don't think there's any hands up. Okay. So it's interesting because sometimes the tone, you realize you're harsh with yourself, let alone rigid, impatient with yourself, berating yourself. What's your problem? Stop whining. Shut up. You're stupid. You never do anything right. Some people have responses like that. So it's really helpful sometimes to look at, why not treating yourself? Why not treat yourself like a good friend? See what happens. So it's nice to kind of think of for a second, when you start the berating mind on yourself, that internal commentary again of negative, is just to think, what if this is a friend of mine? Would I be saying this, Ralph?
I was just going to comment that I feel like I'm really crawling out of this deep rut of the self-loathing, self-flagellation, and so on. I'm getting much better at it. So where I used to look at myself in the mirror and say, oh, I hate you, literally sometimes. It's, almost 100%. It's, I love you, brother. Yeah.
Right. Nice.
So I'm practicing. But that's the point, is that in this little exercise, right, I found myself switching roles back and forth and finding at some points some really deep sorrow, deep regret, even shame, and I recognize that that's where I get stuck. That's where I get stuck, and that this is going to it takes practice. It takes time. It took a long time to get here. It takes a long time to get out.
Right.
And so it's not,
right. Can you guys hear him? Can you hear what he said? No. Okay. So Ralph was just saying that this is a long process. Thank you. Of, you go through self-loathing for a long time. You go through self-loathing and really, I hate you. And, and transforming some of it, and even affirmations people use, I'm great. You're a good person. But he's talking about how long it takes. You have to be patient with the process. And we're very impatient in this culture. You really have to be patient with that process, to give yourself that. It's good. So we do call it Buddhist practice. Okay. What is Buddhist practice? Well, anything you practice that you got good at. Some of you play musical instruments, right? Some of you do sports. Do you remember some of you won't remember because you grew up with computers but do you remember the first learning how to use a computer? Now look at some of the ages. We had to practice. I remember having a cheat sheet. Literally, it was like, number 1, turn on. Seriously, but it was, you really didn't know the old terminals and you had to figure out, what am I doing? And then after 2 weeks, I didn't need the sheet anymore. I knew what I was doing. It's like that. Anytime you get a new phone and how do? You practice. But we're not even aware of practicing those kind of things. With your mind, it's the best thing to practice with. It's your mind. According to Buddhism, it's the most subtle consciousness that's going to go on into future lives. Wouldn't you want to make some positive imprints there so you can ensure more happiness for yourself, better rebirths? So it takes a lot of practice and time. What better thing is there to work on? But what happens is we're so distracted, we're so brainwashed by other parts of our culture that say, no, do this, buy this and you'll be happy. Have this and you'll be happy. Do these, like, let's distract ourselves as much as we can so that we don't have to face the pain. The pain's going to be there. It's always there. Okay. Until you get out of samsara, it's going to be there. And if you haven't prepared yourself and practiced enough, when you're dying, it's going to be there. Really big in your face. I'm sorry, but it just is. So the smoother you go through that transition, it is just a transition. It's more dramatic transition than just walking out that door, let's say. It is a dramatic transition, but we can make it very peaceful, very spacious, right? Even beneficial to use it for more imprints in that subtle consciousness that's going to carry on like that. But that's not what our culture is really doing, you know? So it's something about those of you that got in this room, those of you that came on tonight on the Zoom thing, it's extraordinary to have a rebirth that meets the Dharma, that to be a human that comes in contact with spiritual teachings like these that can help you dismantle all of your negative aspects of your mind permanently and have you reach this fully awakened state. But it takes effort and it takes practice. So please be patient with yourself. Seriously. And I mentioned the other night about those of you, you look back a year at your mind coming in contact with Dharma. There's significant change. You look back 2 years there, but all those little steps. So we want a big step in the States. You know, I want my enlightenment now. I came to the class tonight. I didn't get enlightened. What happened? Right? That's how we want it. It's not like that. But all those little increments of improvement, evolution, and you were here and now you're over here. So celebrate that. That's you doing it. And the fact that you got in the room, somebody that had your consciousness before, meaning it's your mind, it's only your mind, but in different forms, somebody did a lot of work to get you in this room. I rejoice at that every day. Somebody got me into robes. Somebody got me into that I could teach, that I helped these centers, that somebody did a lot of work back there. I don't know if I'm doing enough work right now in this life, but somebody did a tremendous amount of work to have the life that I have right now, this blessed life. So rejoice at that for yourself. That's fantastic quality about you. That's what I meant, is you all have good qualities. Well, there's one. There's one right there. Very significant. Very significant. Okay, let me just get out of this page, which I somehow can't right now. Oh, here we go. Okay. I would also say self-compassion is related to things like life satisfaction. People that have the self-compassion, there's a lot of satisfaction and meaning in life. You have confidence. You have confidence. You're okay with yourself, meaning you're also okay with your flaws. And you realize everybody has flaws, but I'm not going to focus on that too much because I'm not focusing on mine, celebrating my good stuff, but I'm aware of my flaws, aware of the failures and mistakes, so I can improve myself, that I can improve myself. It's very, very helpful. Okay. It's also related to something I'm going to call emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, fantastic thing to have on the planet right now. So there's somebody in Russia right now that doesn't appear to have a lot of emotional intelligence, who decided to create a war with the neighboring country. How many people have died and are suffering? It's a total disaster. It's a total nightmare right now. I mean, it makes me really sad personally, right? So think about your emotional intelligence. You show up at a business meeting, right? I'm calm, I'm balanced, right? This person's fighting over their budget. I don't really agree with them. And I've had a few issues with this person. My emotional intelligence coming from my confidence because I'm taking care of myself. Okay, well, let me hear the whole argument that he's posing right now. Let me hear him out, the whole thing. Let me listen. You know, I'm noticing my impatience come up, but that's okay. I'm a human being. I'm dealing with it. I'm going to listen. And then I'm going to present, kind of maybe agree with them on certain points. And I'm going to present some other things that we need for this office or we need for the business right now. Emotional intelligence comes from self-compassion, related. Social connectedness is related to self-compassion. This is a huge one with the pandemic. Social connectedness. We have a way with Zoom. We are a bit connected. You see each other. You can see everybody there. Fortunately, great. Like that. But now we're re-emerging and some of the centers are starting to open. And it's honestly a little bit scary for people. And I've heard people at some of the centers where I'm teaching, and I've heard some of them just said, well, no, I'm just going to do it in my room tonight. I'm not going to the meditation hall. Just want to stay in my, it's safe, my container. But it took us a while to get on to Zoom in the beginning to get that set up. Remember, you guys were, I'm sure you remember all the different centers were scrambling. Some got on right away. They had tech people. Some it took months. Some never got on. Some never managed to do it, and they combined with another center. And so first it was scrambled. Now everybody got used to that, and they like being in their pajamas at home with a glass of wine with their camera turned off, right? Maureen, no, I'm joking. Picking on Maureen. She's not going to let me live that one down. Okay, right? But there is a comfort in that, and there's also the jewel where you can go to any teaching anywhere, pretty much. You want to get up in the middle of the night, you can. There's amazing stuff out there. There's too much almost. How do you pick and choose, right? So think about the social connectedness, what it's done to us, where we retreated, separated, distanced, isolated. Really hard for a lot of people, especially people living alone that aren't used to retreat. For me, it was like a retreat. I was so happy. I have to say. I mean, not that people were suffering, but that pandemic in the beginning, I was really like, this is great. I'm off the road for a while. Like this was. But again, think about, from myself, taking care of myself, I see again the shared common humanity with other people. What are they going through a little bit? What does that person need? Because I know what I need. Looks like he needs that right now. She needs that right now. And I want to connect with people a little bit more. Confidence in myself. Okay. Okay. And the opposite, okay, self-criticism. Self-criticism. What does that do for you? Depression, anxiety. Here's another one. How about rumination? Rumination. The thoughts you're turning over and over and over and over. And now you made a trench. So when you make that trench to the ruminating mind, which we all do, we've all been there. It's hard. Some do it more than others. But when you make that trench, then what happens is I'm back in the situation again. You're more readily to fall right in the trench again, instead of making a new healthy neural pathway. It's almost a little bit, and it's hard to relate to this in Florida, but I lived in Vermont running a center up there for a few years. And I used to come down to Florida every year and teach. And I like Vermont. I like the winters. I'm a cold weather person, so it didn't bother me. But people go cross-country skiing, okay? Very common thing in Vermont. And you can also go backcountry skiing. So if you're cross-country skiing, there's a trail. It's already groomed. It's easy. Off you go. There's the ruminating mind. There's my trench, right? Backcountry, you're cutting your own trail, and it's harder work. Okay, that's when you create a new neural pathway. I'm choosing. I'm getting out of the rumination. I'm watching my mind going through self-loathing. Hate myself. I'm such a jerk. So stupid. Over and over. And after a while, please, if you get tired of it, or you realize I need to stop this, right? And then it's hard to get out of the trench. All the effort is, that's not an accurate story that you're not a good person. It's not an accurate story. Why do we keep doing that over and over? So finally, I'm going to practice. A lot of people think this way. Right? Oh, look at the self-loathing. I'm just going to watch it. That I have that experience of doing that just from habit of doing it, just from familiarity of doing it. That's all. It's not that I'm a bad person. It's just that I do that again and again and again. Then the self-loving, it's going to take a lot of effort. Let me pull myself up onto the bank. Okay, now I got the skis going over here. Great. I'm off there's the trench, but I'm over here. It's taken a lot of effort, like you said. But now I'm going in this direction. That's what we have to do. Rumination's a hard one, but we can do it, okay? Another thing is suppressing my thoughts. I'm not angry, you're seething. I'm not angry, okay? We don't do that in Buddhism necessarily, okay? And here's another one, perfectionism. Perfectionism. I like to think I'm a recovering perfectionist. I'm not sure if I'm there. I'm not sure I'm totally there. But think about holding yourself, number one, to this really high standard that nothing's perfect in samsara, right? And then as a result of that, you've got a really high bar for other people, and they're never going to live up to it, right? Think about that perfectionist quality. We had a board meeting on Sunday, Land of Medicine Buddha. I'm the chair of the board, right? Reluctantly, but if it helps, okay. I don't know what they really want me to do, but I'm okay. And one of my friends there in the meeting, and we were talking about a couple communication issues we had together, but I love him dearly, loves me, there's no problem. But I just kept saying, and then you said this, then you know, and can you cut me some slack? I said, can you cut me some slack? And he looked at me and he goes, I know, I always do that. I criticize people. I criticized you. And then he says to me, I'm not perfect. And then I went, like, you told me that and you didn't ask me to sit down first? I'm shocked, like, right? So again, it's like, we're not perfect. Why am I holding myself to that? The rigidity, again, comes from there. Like, my goodness, right? So just with self-compassion, we loosen the hold on our negative speak, okay? We loosen that hold. But you have to be gentle with yourself and you have to be patient with yourself. It's going to take time, especially if you have a long trench, the self-criticism. I had it for many years, long time ago, over and over, watching and analyzing. Ask yourself, is it accurate what you're saying? You never do anything right? That's not accurate. You're stupid? I don't think anybody in here is stupid. It's not accurate, but you get used to these stories. Maybe also because you heard them from your upbringing. Also can come from there, imprints, but only karma that I created. I'm not going to blame my parents. It's all my mind. Buddhism says it all comes from the mind. All comes from the mind, created it. Created your parents to be your parents. Created their influences on you, things like that. And again, just taking this on a little bit of how to add these questions. What do I do when these are coming up, when the negative mind speak, what's happening? Okay. Here's just these simple questions again. 4 simple ways you can add. What am I observing right now? What am I observing? Whether you're driving, whether you're at a business meeting, whether you're sitting down to dinner, suddenly the negative speak comes up. You get off the phone with somebody. You didn't like what they said. You have an argument. What am I observing? Period. What am I observing? Number 2, what am I feeling? Just mindfulness, noticing that, okay? Number 3, the loving kindness. What am I needing right now? Don't get into a thing, I shouldn't need anything. I mean, people have a none, I'm not supposed to need anything. No, what am I needing right now? I need some care. It's okay. Okay. Number 4, do I have a request of myself or someone else? Do I have a request of myself or someone else? And you might need to ask somebody, just like I said to my friend, hey, can you cut me some slack? You know, he said that was so powerful. I wrote it in an email also. Because when I saw that email, you said that, he goes, I realized, yeah. So I just put it out there. Can you cut me some slack? I'm doing the best I can. Trying to help here. You know, you're doing the best you can. I know that. So these 4 questions, they help you to listen deeply to what we need most in the moment. We don't listen that well as well, right? We don't listen to other people that well. Active listening is a whole part of communication. We think communication is, how do I express myself? We're not listening to people. So then you don't hear people that well. And here's another thing that happens. Just practicing kind of mindful self-compassion, a treat you can offer. How many of you have partners, people you live with? Few people. People you live on, yeah, okay, looking at the partners or even housemates, okay? The people most intimate to you or the people you live with, we listen less to them. We think we know everything they're saying. Everything, we got it, right? How many times has this person, especially if there's somebody you're married to or your kid or something like that, and they say something, you're doing the dishes, you're making dinner, you're having something to drink, passing through the living room, whatever it is, they say something, but here's what you heard. Right? You just walk through, got, you know, and then later they'll say, I told you. And then you, what do you say? No, you didn't. Yes, I did. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. Back and forth. Active listening. And I mentioned this story before. So when I lived in Vermont, we had a great manager. And she came to me and said at one point, I don't think you're listening to me well. So I thought about it and I said, okay, fair enough. I'm going to work on that. So I was cooking, big country kitchen, big wooden table in the middle. She's doing the dishes with her back to me. Kitchen sinks on the other side. And she's talking about something I thought was suddenly really important to her. So I decided I shut the burner off and I turned around and I'm leaning on the table, looking at her back, just listening. I want to make sure I'm really hearing what she's saying. I'm like this. And she finishes the dishes, dries her hand, she turns around, and she's still talking the entire time. And she turns around, dries the dishes, turns around, and she sees me. She looks at me, she goes, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I'm just listening to you." So again, it allows us, the 4 questions allow us to deeply listen to what we need most in the moment. Okay. So that we can hear more. First of all, we're hearing ourselves. What do you really need? We're not used to expressing that to ourselves. Okay. But you can also hear other people. It's really nice to actively listen to other people. I see sometimes in meetings at centers where people interrupt. You know, you're saying, "Oh no, I have the solution for that." No, you don't need to finish your. I love the Native American ritual. They wait. You know, they completely wait till somebody's done speaking. Some of the people, "Ho," they say. That you're completed talking. Ho. Then they know the next person can go on. It's a beautiful ritual. Sometimes passing a talking stick. So when you have the talking stick, you talk. If you don't have the talking stick, you don't talk. So you know, because we interrupt a lot, back and forth like that. Okay. Sometimes you need to, and I think it's helpful, speak aloud to yourself when you can. If you have the space like that in your house, speak out loud to yourself what you want to say. When you mentioned having the self-loathing, right? And sometimes that was spoken aloud. "I'm such a jerk. I'm so stupid." Right? So, and here's the loving kindness aspect. Sharon Salzberg, there's a really beautiful book she wrote years ago called Loving Kindness. I really like the book. She mentions in it that she's leading a retreat on loving kindness, in the middle of this loving kindness retreat. And she gets interrupted because a friend has passed away suddenly and she has to go to the funeral. So she's leaving the retreat early. And she's packing really quickly. And she's really upset that the friend died. So she's really alarmed, she's kind of shaking, and she's packing quickly alone in her room. And she knocks over a glass and it shatters all over the floor. And she immediately says to herself, alone in the room, "You're so stupid, and I love you." And so the "and I love you," she said she noticed, came from the retreat she was leading. We leave out the "and I love you." So are you adding an "and I love you," even if you get an "I'm so stupid" going? Okay. So sometimes the speaking aloud, you realize if you just say, "You're so stupid," it kind of falls into this deaf reverberating area. Like, "You're so stupid." Wow, really? I don't think I'm that stupid, you know? So sometimes say it aloud, and it might even be the kindness you're saying aloud. Sometimes I say to myself, "I'm okay. I'm okay." You know, whatever, like I just kind of mess it up, but I'm okay. You know, I'm doing all right, doing the best I can. I'm okay. I'm good. I'm good enough. How about that? I'm good enough. We all are, by the way. We all are. So sometimes if you notice that, can you add a positive phrase at the end? The "and I love you," or whatever it is for you, whatever speaks to you. I find that really, really helpful. And here's another thing. So when you're feeling bad about something, think about what you just said to yourself in that space, if it was something negative, okay? And here's the next thing. Can you try to be as accurate as possible? Okay. Noting your inner speech accurately. Okay. What words do you actually use when you're self-critical? What are the actual, like, get familiar with those words. You know, what's my tone? Why am I using that tone? How come I choose that word over this other word? You know, you start dissecting, and as you dissect, it starts melting and falling away and dissolving. Because you know, on some level, you're not stupid. So I wonder why I'm using that word. You know, oh, because I know somebody else in my life always used that word. And just an influence from there. I don't have to carry it on, but it's an influence right now. So it's in my mind. There's a trench of that in my mind. There's a habit in my mind. Okay. Notice, are there key phrases that come up over and over again? And notice the tone of your voice. Is it harsh? Is it cold? Is it angry? Is it snippy? Right? Does the voice remind you of anyone in your past? Right? Who is very critical of you? A lot of it comes from there as well. Okay. Not blaming that person. I created that person for my mind. I created a certain parent, for instance, due to my karma. that just happen to manifest that way. I'm not going to blame them like that. So you want to understand and get to know that inner critic really well, to become aware of when the inner judge is active. To just start observing like that. Then, can you make an active effort to soften the self-critical voice? Okay, but to do it with compassion rather than judgment. Okay? So instead of saying, you're such a jerk to the inner critic, shut up, it could be that to the inner critic, I know you're trying to keep me safe. I know you're really upset right now, and you're pointing out ways I need to improve. Okay. But the harshness in your tone, it's not really helping me at all. Okay. So please, can you just stop being so critical? Okay. Because you're causing me unnecessary pain. Put it into your own words. I'm just giving you an idea. Maybe you need to say it out loud. I know you're trying to protect me right now. I know you feel really, really hurt right now. But let's not do this. Let's not fall into the trench together again. I don't want to be in the trench anymore. I want to be up on the mountain where I can see the whole panorama. So here's another exercise I like after this is what I would do is reframe. Okay. Reframing is a huge component of joy, huge component of happiness. Okay. Reframe the observations made by your inner critic in a kind, friendly, positive way. So if you're having trouble thinking of words to use, you might want to imagine again what your compassionate friend would say. You're coming to a compassionate friend, what would they say to you, okay, in a situation? So you could have terms of endearment. I know some people that are like, yes, dear. Lama Yeshe used to say that to people. Yes, dear. And you automatically feel a little closer like that. Why not say it to yourself? Okay, honey, I know you're struggling right now. Whatever term of endearment works for you. And that strengthens expressed feelings of warmth, of care, but only if it feels natural to you, not a schmaltzy kind of unnatural thing. What would you say to yourself? What would be natural to you? Okay. Darling, sweetheart, I know you ate the whole bag of cookies because you're feeling really sad right now. Okay. I thought it would cheer myself up. Okay. And this is really you speaking to you. Okay. But now you feel even worse. Okay. Now you're not feeling good in your body. I want you to be happy. Okay. So why don't you take a long walk so that you'll feel better? Okay. Instead of you pig, right? Which you might have said for eating the bag of cookies. Okay. So do you get the idea? You know what I mean? There's a softening of the heart. But again, you have to put these into your own words. But again, reframe the situation. Let the inner critic, can I come to it in a kind, friendly, positive manner like that? And again, you might want to, while engaging in this supportive self-talk, I might want to put a hand on my heart. I know you ate those cookies because you feel really lousy. You're really not a pig. Let's go out for a walk in a half an hour after we digest all the cookies. Let's go out for a walk. You'll go out, look at nature like that. So physical gestures can be really helpful when you're struggling sometimes with words and things like that. This is from Einstein. I've really liked a lot of his writings and things. And I think he had a really deep sense of the nature of reality from all of the work that he did, as a physicist. And he said, this is a quote from him, and a human being is part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison. It's a prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. Love Einstein. I love his stuff. So when we're in touch, and this is going into now common humanity, talk a little bit more about that, shared humanity. When we're in touch with our common humanity, we remember that feelings of inadequacy, feelings of disappointment are shared by all beings. So I don't need to layer extra stuff on me. Other people feel that way. I know in the pandemic, the first year I was getting a lot of calls from people living alone who were really lonely, kind of desperate, afraid, things like that. And one of the things I kept saying to them, I'm like, there's so many people I know feeling that right now. Like, you're not the only one. I know you're living alone. And I bet there's people in your apartment building. You know, I said, are there other people you know on your floor that live alone? Yeah. Have you ever talked to any of them out of the elevator? Now, granted, a lot of people were afraid to go out. They were afraid to mix with other people, but you'd see them in the hall. And I said, you know, did you ever wave to anybody or just talk down the hall? How are they doing? You know, even my neighborhood in Pennsylvania, when I was living there, the houses aren't that far apart. So eventually, like, first everybody was in their houses and going to the supermarket once in a while. That was about the extent. Nobody was talking to each other very much, other than texting and things, you know. And then eventually we went out and we were calling across driveways. We felt, you know, and there was kind of like, how's it going for you? You know, meanwhile, and everybody was in their pajamas outside or sweat. I mean, it was hysterical. I never saw all of it. Nobody, you know, and you know, we'd laugh about it and be, you know, or people would have stained up tops because nobody changed their clothes or did, you know, it's so funny. But just that kind of thing of realizing, oh, it's been hard in your household too. You know, you think it's just your own household because we're so self-absorbed sometimes. No, everybody's feeling that. Okay. And this is a way that what distinguishes self-compassion from self-pity, self-compassion from self-pity. You know, compassion and pity get mixed up as well. Self-pity says, poor me. Self-compassion remembers that everybody suffers. Okay. And it offers a comfort because everybody's human. Okay. The pain I feel in difficult times is the same pain that you feel in difficult times. Okay. The triggers can be different. Okay. Circumstances can be different, but the degree of the pain is different, but the process is the same. Right? So recognition of our common humanity, it's the opposite of isolation, opposite of that distancing like that. And we really need a connection with people, a healthy connection for the world to go around in a harmonious way. And the world's struggling right now. People are struggling from coming out of the pandemic. You know, you have your political scene in Florida, it's different scenes like that causes strife for people. The issue with, you know, my friend yesterday or this morning, we dropped her daughter off at school. And there's police cars outside the school. And I realized it's just security. And I said, oh, is that security for shootings? And she said, yeah, there's police car. Both of her daughter, different schools, and they all have these security things because of the school shootings, which is a real thing, which you had a terrible tragedy in Florida, but they're everywhere now. They're everywhere. It's not Florida's not unique, right? So we need that positive. If I'm having a positive experience with myself, that the more likely is I can extend that to you and to you and to you and to different people like that, to have it with each of you. When I'm not having it with myself, the isolation sets in. How many of the shooters are they finding? You know, alienated white men, very alienated from society, very lost and alienated, often unemployed, you know, borderline mental illnesses. It's so sad. They could get help. But a lot of our medical system's broken as well, and they didn't know where to turn to. You know, so that isolation doesn't help, doesn't really help like that. Okay, another ingredient, talked a little bit more about mindfulness. When you lose yourself in emotional reactivity, this is something Buddhism really fights against, in a sense, losing yourself in emotional reactivity. When I over-identify with myself, and when I'm boosting myself up in an unreal way, that I'm the most important, and anything that threatens that, okay, there's going to be a negative emotional response generally. So again, mindfulness is a kind of non-attached awareness. Non-attached. It doesn't mean you don't care for people, okay? But I can observe. I can observe my mind in pain. I can observe the emotional pain. I can observe frustration, fear, anger, attachment, and just observe without having the over involvement with it, that then spills out and vomits over onto somebody else. And so suddenly I'm not happy. So now I'm going to pour that out on you. Why are you happy? You shouldn't be successful, right? And I love this. One of the famous mindfulness teachers, John Kabat-Zinn, who kind of introduced the mindfulness movement in the States. And it's not really Dharma. And His Holiness once met with him and he said, it's so great, just don't call it Dharma, mindfulness. Dharma is really about dismantling delusion in your mind to show up, dismantling delusion in your mind. Mindfulness observes the delusion. It doesn't necessarily dismantle it like that. But he says, John Kabat-Zinn, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf. Okay. So the pain's going to be there, the suffering's going to be there. I can learn my emotional response to it. How am I choosing to respond right now? Like that. So, and there's certain things of like a self-compassion scale. And you can look at, one of the things is I'm tolerant of my own flaws and inadequacies is the opposite of when I see aspects of myself I don't like, I get down on myself. Okay. But as opposed to I'm tolerant of my own flaws and inadequacies. It's a more positive spring like that. That would be self-kindness. If I'm looking at common humanity, here's one way of looking at it. When I feel inadequate in some way, I try to remind myself that feelings of inadequacy are shared by most people. That seems pretty balanced, right? And an opposite is when I'm feeling down, I tend to feel that most other people are probably happier than I am, right? That alienates you, separates you. One thing that's really interesting when I'm leading meditation retreats is there's, occasionally people are meditating, people are newer, and the new people come in and they're really like, they first start the session. It's not like this, relax, shoulders drop, face, right? Then they start sitting, and then there's several sessions. So they're getting used to sitting, but the body's in a little bit of pain, the knees are hurting. Yes. But then I'll notice occasionally, I'll open my eyes and I see somebody else will open their eyes, they look around the room, and your impression is, as a new meditator, everybody here is really experienced meditator. Really great I can't meditate. I shouldn't even be here. You don't know what's going on inside their minds. They might just look good from the outside. No idea. So again, that common humanity is when I'm feeling down, when I feel isolated, when I'm alone, when I'm feeling down, I tend to think that most other people are really happy, much happier than myself. Then here's how you want to deal in mindfulness. Balanced way. When I'm feeling down, I try to approach my feelings with curiosity and openness. Curiosity is a great word. You're having a negative reaction. Delusion arises in your mind. Fear, jealousy, depression, anger, attachment, confusion, pride, right? I get curious. I notice something come up in my mind, some bubble I'm not comfortable with. I'm like, what's going on right now? Oh, I'm really tired. Oh, I've often had a problem with that person, or I'm really not comfortable with the work I'm doing. Like I'm a little over my head here with this work, whatever it is just noticing. So instead of getting down on yourself, get curious, right? What was the other thing I wanted to say about that? With mindfulness. Okay. The opposite of this, when you're getting down on yourself, opposite of mindfulness, seeing it was when I'm feeling down, I tend to obsess and fixate on everything that's wrong. Yeah, we do that. Obsess and fixate on everything that's wrong. Mindfulness is simply moment to moment awareness. Just try your best. You just see what's going on. I don't need to fix. And that's a hard part for us. You're suffering. You're upset. You're hurt, right? We want to fix it, or we want to fix it in someone else. Mindfulness sometimes just stays again with the discomfort and you get more comfortable with it. Seriously. We try our best. And I would say an attitude of open-heartedness. When it says openness, curiosity, and openness, open-heartedness is necessary for mindfulness to be more healing. That attitude of open-heartedness. If I can hold my mindfulness there, can be really, really helpful. Mindfulness isn't necessarily trying to relax. It's not a religion. Okay. It's not about transcending ordinary life. It's not emptying the mind of thoughts. That's not mindfulness. Okay. It's not really that difficult. Okay. And it's not an escape from pain. Sometimes we think it's going to be about that basic mindfulness practice. It's not about those things. It's showing up and just being with what is, being with who you are. When I say, and I started in even the meditation in the beginning, is people are trying to meditate. So it's an action word. I'm meditating. And you have this little inner dialogue. Am I meditating? Am I doing it? Am I doing it right? Am I good? Am I squeezing? Am I on the topic? Am I following the breath? Stop just let the thoughts go, let them bubble off, float away. Can you just be in meditation? Because it's the natural state of your mind to just be. But we don't have any experience of that. We don't have any habit. We're so distracted, right? Questions before we close? Any questions or comments? Anybody on the screen?
Something you had mentioned, which I've thought about, the distinction between self-compassion and self-pity, or compassion and pity for another. It seems to me that pity is more of a judgment.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. Pity also doesn't want to get their hands dirty. Doesn't want to get in the trenches with somebody. Compassion really is from, I think, the Latin to suffer with. So you're willing to, it doesn't mean that you can only help somebody. Your mother didn't die, their mother died, and you say, I'm really, really sorry, but you're willing to hang out there with them. How are you doing? What can I help you with? Compassion is the one who, that I want to bring you food, and the person goes, no, I don't need it. But you just leave it at their door and you don't need a thank you note or anything. Pity is like, oh, I'm really, really sorry. Let me know if you need anything, right? You were often people in grieving, they're not going to call you. You have to just take action and do something. Whether they appreciate it or not, they can give the food to somebody else, but it just kind of gets in there with them and hangs with them to what's really your experience, what's going on for you right now. Pity's looking down on them. Oh, what a shame. Boy, I'm really glad I'm not that guy. Don't want to be in his position. So I think it's more judgmental. Yeah. And I would say, I'm going to bring this down just in conclusion of, and there's so much more we could go. This is like a longer course I normally teach, is that's why I was going through a lot of different notes of getting to the pith, is a lot of basic practice in general that lends to self-compassion is you do something, right? You practice something, right? And you check, does it work or does it not work, right? And if it works, you do it again, right? So if, let's say you do an unhealthy behavior, okay? Something you observe, do something different. That works, do it again. Practice. Again, so we make mistakes. I'm just going to observe, check out what happened. Well, I hurt that person. Didn't really mean to say that. I kind of ran off and did that. I'm going to do something different next time. Try something different. That worked. Continue that behavior over and over. That's your breaking new trail. Off you go. Don't be surprised though if you slide back into the trench once in a while. That's normal. You don't have enough of the trail there, you fall back in, and then it's a little easier getting out. That saying in the book, Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, Sogyal Rinpoche. It was a big book when it came out some years ago, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And there's a page in there, I forget where he took it from. He didn't write it, it was from something else. And he says, spiritual practice is, I walk down the street, right? There's a big hole in the street. I don't see it. I fall into the hole. Takes me a really long time to get out. I finally get out of the hole. I continue down the street. Second scenario is I walk down the same street. There's a really big hole in the street. I see it. I still fall into the hole. It's a little easier for me to get out, and I continue down the street. Third scenario is I walk down the same street. It's a really big hole in the street. I see the hole. I walk around it. I continue down the street. Fourth scenario, I choose another street. That's our practice. So please be patient with yourself. You just try your best. And as much as you can, just try to be kind to yourself. You deserve it. You deserve it. Slowly, slowly, patiently, patiently. I'd like to dedicate the merit and whatever positive energy, just to conclude, we set a motivation in the beginning. The other bookend is to dedicate the merit so that you seal in your positive energy without it getting destroyed by anger and negativities that we do. I'd like to dedicate to our being able to practice more and more self-compassion on our path to enlightenment, because many beings need us so that we can really benefit all living beings. I'd like to dedicate to our sisters and brothers in Ukraine for that war to end immediately, and for the minds of all the leaders of totalitarian regimes, for their minds to be merged with bodhicitta instantly. I'd like to dedicate to our precious Lamo, who passed away several days ago from this community, and may she be free of suffering and immediately take a good rebirth to get enlightened to benefit all, for the great flourishing and success of Thupten Khunga Center and all of our centers and projects of the FPMT. And thank you to the whole community for supporting me, for supporting the teachings and all the teachers that come through here, and for the long lives of our precious teachers. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone in the Zoom room.
Thank you.